people get excited about the I do's and the I wills when it's wedding time. It's a beautiful thing to dream about the blissful day with the one you love. But too often we are not taking the time to consider the reality of the day-to-day living or securing our future. It is absolutely necessary to consider life after the honeymoon. I am Dr. Sabrina Ellis, and welcome to Wife Life, Securing Your Future. Hello, I am Dr. Sabrina Ellis, and welcome to Wife Life, Securing Your Future, which is part of the D3 Podcast Network. I am excited to be with you in this 2023 season. We are in a new year, and this is season 2, episode 1. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you've been hanging out with me for the last year, thank you. Thank you for being an avid listener. I appreciate your support. My goal in this podcast is to help women and men have some tough conversations, but absolutely necessary conversations, especially if you are a couple, if you are married, if you are looking to be married in a relationship. It is my hope that this information will be meaningful to you and your future. In my own life, I found that most people prefer not to have these conversations or even think about these conversations during their marriage or their time together. Nobody wants to talk about the end of the relationship, whether it ends in divorce or whether it ends by death. That is part of the cycle that we prefer not to have the conversation about, because at the beginning of a relationship, you're excited about the relationship of itself and in and of itself, and you're also excited about the other person and just living life together. The joys of the wedding and that day and the excitement that is involved in that day, then the preparing to live life together, a home, kids, pets, all of those things are wonderful things to plan for, but we just don't like planning for what could be the reality, the inevitable, and that is the end of all things. But I want to encourage you that it doesn't have to be so bad, so somber. You can make these plans and prepare and put it away and just let life go on as life does. The truth of the matter is, the end of life is inevitable for all of us. And I think the fact that we don't learn how to deal with our losses impacts the fact that we avoid having the conversation. So my job is to encourage you to have those conversations. So there is information that is available to us via the U.S. Census Bureau, which includes stuff like the divorce rate and statistics pertaining to widows and widowers. According to the CDC, the divorce rate is more than 50% in the U.S. Half the people that get married are expected to end those marriages in divorce. Approximately 800,000 people are widowed each year, and 700,000 of them are women. Listen, women, 700,000 of the 800,000 people who are widowed each year are women. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And worldwide, there are roughly 115 million widows living in poverty. That's why women need to know what financial plans are in place to take care of them and their children in the event of divorce or death. So in season 2, I wanted to start by talking to you about the importance of wife life, securing your future, and how important it is for you to have a plan. In my book, I talk about my passion for this subject and how it came about. And I have to admit, it might be a little strange, but it started as a teenager, really started as a teenager. Now, it took some years for me to look back over my life and realize that this was a concern for me all along. But at the age of about 14, my parents divorced. So that marriage ended in divorce. It was earth-shattering, to say the least, I'm sure, for my mom, and it was for the kids as well. I'm the oldest of 3. So my siblings and I experienced part of the pain, but my mom had to bear the brunt of it because she became the parent who would finish raising her 3 children without a father in the home. Now, those of you that have experienced divorce that are listening to me, you know that means more than just the absence of a male figure. That meant the absence of another income, which meant she had to do the best she could to raise her children without that income. My father was a pastor. That means he was a leader in the community. So not only did he decide to leave his family, but at some point he decided to walk away from the church, the congregation. Well, early on, he had made an arrangement with the church and used the church, used our home as collateral to build a new church, a new building, a new edifice, which meant now that he decided that he didn't want to pastor any longer, that our home is now their property. And guess what? They decided they wanted their property. So with little notification, my mom was made aware of the fact that she had to vacate that home. So now she's looking for a new place to live with her children. It was, again, devastating. We move out of the home. We have another place to live. It's not a house, which we had been accustomed to. It's now an apartment. Not only is it an apartment, mom has to make sure that she can get a car to drive, because the car we had, guess who took the car? That's right, my father. And then we end up living off of food stamps. I know it's a card nowadays, but back then they were stamps. Everything changed, our entire lifestyle. And so that was the beginning of me paying attention to situations in my context. And for me, then that was the church. And I watched leaders who passed away and their wives went from one lifestyle to another, basically overnight. Well, within the statistics that we have concerning widows, we also know that maybe 4 out of 5 widows live in poverty not many years following their husband's demise. And the statistics are pretty close as it relates to divorce as well. Poverty, from living at least a middle-class life to poverty, and some even living a life what appears to be better than that. Things change significantly. I watched this time and time again. It became very frustrating for me because I couldn't understand how it is that these women looked amazing. Their clothes were amazing. Their accessories were amazing. Everything, they looked like they had it all together. And when their spouses passed away, everything changed. And so over time, especially in the last few years, when I had closer friends and connections, and their spouses passed away. And in one situation, the woman became in such a bad way. Her circumstances were absolutely horrible. She went from having everything to literally having nothing and being evicted from her home. Again, the church owned the house. And while many had a lot to say about what was right, what was wrong, what was ugly, all of it was ugly, but legally, the house belonged to the church. And even though she was put out and left in this crazy situation to fend for herself, nobody supporting her, she ends up sleeping on the couch of a friend or family member, all because there were no plans made for her. Yes, women, ladies, we can blame our spouses. We can say they should have done something that they did not do. But at what point do we wake up and realize if we can't have the legitimate conversation, what will we do? What can we do? And that's what my book talks about. Wife After Life, Securing Your Future. There are things that need to be put in place, and you have the conversation with your spouse. Make sure that there's an insurance policy and that you're the beneficiary of that policy, and many other things that can be put in place when you have the conversation. You have to have the conversation. We'll talk later in future podcasts about what it might look like if your spouse is not willing to have the conversation. We're going to discuss things like that because not every spouse is willing to have the conversation. There are some hard things that you might have to face when you start asking questions about your future. Again, nobody likes to talk about the end. But if we do, if we discuss it and plan for it, then maybe we don't have to have so much shame added to the pain. So let's get ready for another season of discussing wife life, securing your future. We may not be able to stop the divorce. We certainly can't stop whatever God has planned as it relates to the end of life. It is what it is. It is inevitable. We don't know who will go first, but that's why we suggest that both men and women learn what's necessary, what's absolutely important, and how to prioritize your business. You plan for how to buy the house. What happens if you lose the house? So there is always room for planning and considering what the possibilities may be. Let me say to you that I wrote the book in 2019. At the top of 2020, I was ready to launch the book, to have this conversation, start the discussions. I had no clue that by the end of 2020, I would be that widow. Thank God I started planning when I did. I did not start planning as early as I should have and would like to have, because like many of you, I didn't want to have the conversation. Like many of you, didn't know I needed to have the conversation. But when I learned what I learned, I started preparing. I'm not wealthy. I'm not filthy rich, but I'm okay. That's what you want to be, okay, and not living in poverty. You got to plan for it. So listen, ladies, plan to follow the podcast throughout 2023. Grab a girlfriend, grab a guy friend, tell somebody, listen, we need to hear this information, and then start planning. Get ready to make your plans for your future. I was inspired to write the book because I wanted to help somebody else. Now I'm the widow, so I get to experience firsthand what it's like not to have a husband who's taking care of everything. I got to do it myself, and you should prepare yourself for the inevitable or the possibilities. So during this season of Wife Life, on this D-Free platform, follow us, continue with us so that you're aware of what you might need to do. Thank you again for following, for listening. And we want to conclude this particular episode of the Wife Life Securing Your Future podcast. And we want to say thank you. It is a part of D-Free Podcast Network, and I'm excited for what's in store this season. Please make sure you like and rate and subscribe to this podcast wherever you download your podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on, don't forget to like and subscribe and also rate. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.